artist first or a chef first?
An artist. I'm hardly a chef.
So when you say the word artist, right? When I go there, or when I go to a museum, or when we go and see art, there's always a long-term view of what you see because it lasts for a really long time. A lot of what you make doesn't, by definition, right? Does that change your view on how you kind of plate stuff or how you cook stuff?
I think food, I'd beg to differ because food, I think, has a very everlasting memory, right? It's an emotion, it's nostalgia, it's really, I think you may forget the form or the drama at what's happening at the restaurant, but that memory of the dish stays, right?
I agree in a sense because some of the most fun memories I have growing up revolve around food, right? So we're both from Bombay, so if you go, when we used to come back from Oval playing football or cricket, we used to stop at Bachelor's, have that chocolate milkshake, right? That memory.
Strawberry and cream.
Yeah, exactly. And that memory or that food item always sticks with you, right? And it never tastes as good 20 years hence, or sometimes when you go with the same set of friends and it kind of gives you that feeling. Is that what you guys go for when you're designing a menu or when you're designing kind of plating? Are you trying to help the customer or the person eating the food kind of create those memories or take them to some place?
Definitely. I think that the way at least we design food at Masque is, it's not that we're just replicating a dish, but we're definitely trying to replicate an emotion or a nostalgia that you've probably experienced these flavors in your childhood, or a memory of a dish. But I think that we're really turning it on its head, and it's really done a Masque way. There's a newness of how we imagine that dish, or the chef is really giving his own expression to that dish.
So when you go about, or whenever you've gone about kind of some of these places, which I'm assuming that you would take inspiration from, or when you went to some of the areas that you did, like you mentioned, Alchemist or things like that, right? What are the kind of inspirations that you've taken or that you think have been kind of guiding you when you create whatever amazing food that you guys create?
So, let me talk about Masque here for a minute. That I think that our journey was that we wanted to really explore the ingredients of our country. We wanted to explore what's in our backyard, give that importance and give that focus. And it was for like nearly 18 months, we, traveled through the country, learning about our local or native ingredients, what's growing in people's backyards, what people are like, they could be excited about eating, like simple berries, like we discovered like sea buckthorn or hisalu and kafal when we traveled through Ladakh or like Uttarakhand. And these are like things, in sea buckthorn was used, like they were using it for making fences, or like making like a, refreshing drink, or, hisalu kafal, they're eating it literally like out of just like cones being sold at a vegetable market. So we realized that there's so much undiscovered, unique produce that needed spotlight in maybe a fine dining setting. And I think that was the whole idea of, how our dishes came together in the very beginning.
You mentioned something that I find interesting. You said you wanted to spotlight the Indian ingredients in a fine dining space.
Yeah.
But honestly, fine dining itself needed spotlighting.
Yeah.
So, why fine dining? Like, what was the? Because we'll come to the ingredients, because I think that's a very interesting topic as well. But I'm going to take it one step further. Just the fact that fine dining itself or a course meal itself isn't common or wasn't common.
It wasn't common at all, actually.
And I'd still say even now it's not relative to the cities that you talk about. We're still, considering the amount we spend on food.
Correct.
When we travel or even here, we've still not kind of gotten to some of that stage where there's a bunch of fine restaurants. Why fine dining?
I think that for me, I was fortunate enough to, be exposed to so many different, traveling with my parents, or then later traveling with my husband, that for us, it was always about, what food are we eating in every city, or it was always about, it could be a local restaurant or a fine dining restaurant, it didn't matter, but, what are the favorites we're hitting in every city. And all our trips or everything, all the even conversations growing up or on the table was always about food.
Yeah.
And I think that obviously influenced the way I thought. When I come to fine dining, is that I saw that there was a big gap in the market. There was a lot happening all over the globe, but also I didn't want to do the known. I wanted to do the unknown, and I guess customers not always right. So in the beginning, there was a lot of, people pushed us to, hey, do a 3-course, do a 6-course, this menu is too long. Can you not have a small a la carte menu? I mean, we did listen, we did have some iterations of the menu where we did offer a 3 or 6 course. But then finally we realized that, we just want to stick to a philosophy, we have a vision. I think we need to stick to it. And the customer doesn't always need to be right. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We wanted to be disruptive. So it was about just staying on a path, and then things just changed.
Did you always have an end goal in mind? Was it always was the vision very clear, or did the ingredients and kind of your year or two looking at that help define kind of the end goal?
So initially it was very ingredient focused. It was what we found, or through our travels what we discovered is what would show up on the Masque menu. And then it changed. That idea changed over a few years, because it couldn't just be about seasonal ingredients. Of course, the menu still revolves around seasonality, but because in 2020 we started a project called Masque Lab, where we're also able to use ingredients in its prime, but kind of stretch the life of that ingredient through different seasons of our menus at Masque. So it could be through pickling or fermentation. We make our own kojis or garums. So I think that what we did was, supposing, from Uttarakhand, we get a very perishable ingredient like a kafal or a hisalu. Of course, it'll show up on this menu as a fresh ingredient, but could show up on a second menu as a pickled or a dehydrated ingredient. So that's what we started doing, because it was not sustainable also to keep changing the menu weekly or every 10 days based on what ingredients were available. So we had to, that madness needed some method after a point.
Before you had this idea, just around the time of when you had this idea, did you train anywhere, or was there any formal kind of instruction set, or is just experimentation?
I haven't had a formal training in food. It's been quite intuitive. The whole journey has been like that. But of course, I've gone and started in different restaurants, out of curiosity. Earlier on, it wasn't even that I wanted to do something in food. It was just because I loved food and I was curious. I was baking from a very young age. So I've started at La Gavroche, or, through my parents' connection, worked at La Petite Maison and Zuma. I've worked with a street food vendor in Bangkok because I had family staying in Thailand. So I've done a couple of things just because I was curious about how things function and work. But it all kind of, the dots connected when I actually, started helping my mom. That's how actually the business started, is that I started with Sage and Saffron, which was a catering business with my mom, which is still I think it is one of the most iconic boutique catering businesses in the country right now. And that started with it was a home project. I was just helping her professionalize her setup, only to realize how much I actually love creating those experiences, and I could be the young energy creating that 360-degree experience for a guest.
So now that you have a restaurant that kind of is equal to, or spoken in the same breath, is all these places that you worked at, how is your kitchen better? Or what are the things that better is maybe the wrong word, but what are the things that you picked up there that you felt you could improve on from a working standpoint, or just kind of differ from these kind of institutional restaurants?
I think that, at Masque, what we do differently, I mean, a lot of it has also been, from the very beginning, it's just been about constant innovation. Like, we're not scared to innovate. We're not scared to, learn from people, learn from our team, learn from, like, it's a very, I would say it's very open, the whole organization, in terms of, like, the best. If somebody has a good idea, where that becomes part of, what we accept, and becomes part of a system. And it's really like, a perfect storm coming together, whether it is, the team, the perfect team, our briefings or our learnings from each other. It's, it's really a tribe. I don't know how to explain this, but like when you come in as well as a diner, you're going to experience this.
But is that the same everywhere? Or is that something that's special to Masque in your experience?
It's definitely special to Masque, because I think that we are very generous with our hospitality. It's also because of our culture. But it's also very unique to a fine dining setup in a way as well. It's because, you have that customer for those 2 or 3 hours, and you need to make them feel like they're the most important people in the room through service or through that experience you're creating for them. So it is, I think that, and not just fine dining, it's like you go to, I go to a Swati Snacks and I feel the same way.
It's kind of always interesting to me. So, Swati or Cream Center or Bachelors or kind of all of these kind of restaurants that we growing up sort of eating, they've all been now in place for longer than at least I've been kind of born. Is that an aim? Is that an aim that you would want a restaurant to be there for 40, 50, 60 years? Is that something that's of any interest? Because one of the reasons they're very similar. They've stayed the same. And a lot of what you talk about is experimentation and kind of pushing the envelope. Are those two things compatible?
There are different types, right? There are different types of restaurants. Like, I'd still go to a New Yorker to eat my overloaded nachos, and now my kids will be like, one time you're talking about health, and then like how you even consuming like Coke float and these overloaded nachos. But I think that every institution, I think, can stand for what their philosophy or what their cuisine is. And I think that with Masque, in the beginning years, like there were like maybe not even like 2. Sometimes it was difficult to even fill like table of 4 or table of 6 in the restaurant. Now we have a wait list, and I don't think we're going anywhere. We're here to stay. And you don't start to shut anything, right? I mean, your ideas can evolve.
Yeah.
But I think that once you get into a business, and if you're truly passionate about, and you're going to make it work.
So we're kind of discussing at the start of how, when you think of yourself as an artist, and effectively then the place and the memories that are created become sort of like a gallery. And it's very interesting kind of when we discuss movies, or when I think of movies, right, you need to have an Avengers to get me to go to the cinema, or you need to have like a Avatar or like some event movie. And I think Masque is like that, because I don't think you can replicate that at home, because just the skill doesn't exist, and you guys kind of put on a show. Not all food is like that, for various reasons, right? And so as someone who is kind of in all aspects of this business, the commerce side, the catering side, the fine dine side, kind of, what are your thoughts on the food delivery mechanism, on just generally getting food at home, or kind of sort of DIY on this food part? Like, where do you think the future of that aspect is?
I think it's become so exciting. Even like you open a delivery app, like food is more than just biryani and butter chicken showing up on the delivery app. Like, it's so innovative. And our food space, I feel like it hasn't been more exciting. And like, even when I ventured into 27 Bakehouse, the whole idea was that QSRs need to, it still needs to be quality. And there is a space for it, and there was a vacuum. And I think that was the idea of also creating 27 Bakehouse, is that you can make mass food, but make it with high quality. It could be, palatable, but still innovative, and it could reach a larger audience. And I think that there are so many brands out there now, whether it is, even a noodle brand, or like, people doing ramen on a delivery app, but they don't have a storefront. But you can get like one of the best ramens on a delivery app, from a dark kitchen. Or, you could get, there's no Mexican food available in the city, but you could get great Mexican food on a delivery app because somebody in a home setup is doing it so well. So I think that there is definitely a big future for that, and you can hence see how aggressively the Zomatos and Swiggies of the world are also expanding. And they're also expanding into experiences, right? Because they're seeing that there is so much demand for this. Like Zomaland just happened, which was really bringing the best of the best curated vendors in one space, and they created like a food experience which is off their app. So I think that there is a lot of appetite for stuff like that.
How did you go about setting up 27 Bakehouse? Like, I think for me, what I caught on to that was you felt there was a quality gap in the QSR space. How different is that in the setup? How different is that in the execution from a Masque or a Sage and Saffron?
It's very different because I think that when you have a low-priced product, you're catering to a larger audience. So you're constantly solving for customer feedback. There's constant like packaging issues, delivery issues. You're coordinating with apps. You're trying to create a loyalty program. There's so many more touch points, and it's definitely a harder business to focus. But I think it's also extremely exciting because of the scale that can come about a business like this. And so I think that the year one, we're literally just entered year two. It's been a lot about learning and making those fixes. We realized that if we actually want to grow the brand, we need to create a big back-end kitchen where a lot of that heavy lifting can be taken off to a central kitchen, and then the expansion can be easier. We can go to prime real estate without having a big chunk of that real estate, invested towards a kitchen. So I think it's obviously been a lot of learning. We made a lot of mistakes through the first two outlets, but now as we roll out, we're fixing all those mistakes. And I think that we landed up at 27 Bakehouse not because the idea was to first start out with like breads as our, kind of our unique product, but like we dabbled between, should we do a Thai brand, or should we do, we love Levantine food, like maybe we should do a falafel shop. Like we thought about a lot of ideas. We even thought of Mexican. Like we were finding the gaps in the market. And actually during COVID, I started making a lot of sourdough. And just for the fun of it, I was experimenting, and we were, and sourdough was actually catching this trend in India as well. And, it became like the choice of bread for a lot of people for health reasons as well. So we started experimenting at Sage and Saffron. We were doing things like chewy beetroot sourdough or like a truffle sourdough. And we realized that people were really enjoying that innovation, and there was nothing as a neighborhood bakery like you find internationally where you could really go and, eat these different monasteries or laminated doughs with different expressions of like we have a vada pav Danish, in vada pav swirl in 27 Bakehouse, which is so close to, you actually feel like you're eating vada pav. It is so true to, its taste and flavor, but it's just represented in a different style. So I think that became quite an exciting idea when we saw how people were open to the idea for innovative breads. And that same year we were traveling around the Middle East, and then we realized that actually breads and doing a neighborhood bakery, and like literally like a no bullshit, it doesn't need explanation, it doesn't need storytelling, it's just good product.
When you take an idea, and I think Masque must have been significantly more complicated, I'm sure, because of the way it was situated, and then you have an idea now. How do you process that? Like, what are the kind of things that you guys do to kind of, I think you spoke a little bit about traveling the country for like a year or 2 years to figure out the ingredients and then figure out how Masque works. When did you know it'll work? When did you feel like, okay, this is a good idea now?
I always knew it was a good idea. Like everybody said it was a bad idea and it was going to light up my money, but I always knew it was a good idea. So I think that the power is in knowing my execution, knowing that I have the right team. It's so many things that make something magical, right? It's not just one person. It's not one person's idea. It's even with Bakehouse, it's like, I had to find the right chef who's excited about my vision, or the right creative team that's excited, the right person who can communicate the message. So it's so many different ingredients that make a great recipe. But I think that there is definitely conviction, and there is that I'm very sure that, if I've dreamt about it enough to know that it works.
So going back now to the, because honestly, this is something I find fascinating, is how you define yourself, right? And which is why my first question was artist or chef. I was doing a little bit of reading kind of prior to us starting this. And so it turns out the word chef is basically chief, right? And you're supposed to manage all of it. And not as much about cooking as I would traditionally have thought. Is that how you think of yourself? Is that?
No, honestly, I'm not a chef. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've never thought of myself as a chef. Like, I've had chiefs in each of the businesses, or chiefs, there's a chief at Masque, there's a chief at Sage and Saffron, there's a chief at 27 Bakehouse. I'm more of a person who's working very, alongside with them, alongside their ideas. And because I'm extremely creative as well, but sometimes creativity is not enough. You need to have, it has to make business sense. Like, it has to be, you have to be able to sell it. There has to be a marketing plan involved around it. There has to be so much more that just goes to creating a product. And sometimes, just if I get into, I'm in my own creative spin, sometimes a lot of the ideas can also lose a lot of money, and then hence I also then have my husband, who's really been the backbone of everything. He's kind of gone on the wave of our mad ideas, but at some point really put a hammer on our head saying, hey, this is not making sense.
So what?
We've ridden this wave, but it's not working.
And
then we have to pivot. Yeah. We have to pivot. And and thankfully we've pivoted only to be better.
Yeah.
And there has been no looking back.
Any fun, nonsensical idea that you'd like to tell us that you feel like you still think that it should have worked? Anything of that sort?
So during COVID, we had this amazing idea, because we were constantly, Sage and Saffron is literally like a play on no menu is ever alike at a catering. We're constantly creating based on, clients' brief. And we had this idea to do ice creams. And we started a brand called Epic Scoops during COVID. Okay. And we said it actually went viral. We sent ice cream tubs. There were unique flavors of combining strawberry and cheesecake or miso, and nobody was doing stuff like that. We borrowed ideas from Masque Lab and what Masque was doing, but did it in a more commercial kind of package sense. And we sent these, and the whole idea of the whole packaging was that we'd send these ice cream tubs in trunks that were locked. The key to that lock was Epic. So you had to unlock it with the word Epic. So we did a PR thing, and people were, actually the idea went viral. But it was not sustainable. Okay. how can you buy a trunk for every scoop of ice cream you're delivering? And then when people didn't receive it in that packaging, it was but then,
Got it. Does an artist have a responsibility to the public, or only to the art? In that, should food be good for you? Or that is not, or it should only taste good? What's the thought process there, just in terms of health, or in terms of, is it our responsibility as people who come to eat?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we'll always be very conscious about the ingredients that are going into our product. We're not going to be using palm oil and like cheap ingredients to, cut costs, or like, low quality ingredients to bring the costs of our food. So it's like we're always sticking to very high quality ingredients, high quality, the way we process our ingredients, the way we, preserve our ingredients. Like, it's not like, even in the catering, it's not that food is just rolled out from one event to the other every time it's freshly prepared. So of course, when you're in a food business, you're extremely responsible for what you're feeding people.
Your own ethics or your own kind of play on what you do and what you serve. How do you kind of think of that?
For sure. I mean, like I'm saying, like for everything, if for example, a recipe, a dressing, and I'll just talk about catering because that's really where we're really entering people's homes and, replacing their home food to cater to guests in their homes, is that where if a dressing needs to be made with, like if we know that, okay, traditionally you use sugar because it's cheaper alternative, but we'll still switch to using honey or, sometimes even like use alternative, like use jaggery, because, we want to make it a healthy option because everybody's so health conscious, and we want to cater like when we want to replace the host, but still it should be that the host should feel so proud that this is their food that they're serving in their homes. And the same thing in the restaurant, like we're so conscious about, Masque is such an ingredient forward restaurant, so we're so conscious about how everything is made with so much precision, the way we, use our ingredients, and really derive the highest, nutritional value also from the cooking process.
How do you think of dietary restrictions, right? Because we live in a country where there is very varied restrictions on what people eat, on what they like to eat, on what they think they can eat. I'm sure we know enough people that would not eat onions or would not eat this, or maybe would eat egg in a dessert but not outside. And various other kind of restrictions.
Our brands all cater to all dietary restrictions, whether it's at Masque or Sage and Saffron. We have a small plates restaurant called Circle 69. So all these restaurants are able to cater to all dietary restrictions. The only place where we get restrictive is at 27 Bakehouse, is because the philosophy of the brand is butter and flour and sugar. So that is what the brand, those are the three pillars of what the brand is built on. But having said that, we use stone mill flour, our sugars of like a certain quality. The butter is like, you're using really, really good butter. It's not like we're using some commercial grade butter. So I think it's still made with a lot of care and love. And honestly, I think some people are okay with, like, they don't have wheat or sugar allergies, and it's a good cheat.
So you
product.
You think a restaurant should be comfortable in kind of catering to people's...
I can't speak for all restaurants because sometimes it can be restrictive to, how big your back-end kitchen is or what the skill of the team is to be able to innovate for dietary restrictions. I think that for us, it's always been a norm. I'm vegetarian, so the kitchen has always been prepared to cater for all kinds of dietary restrictions. Like, I don't eat egg as a seen egg, but I eat it as an ingredient. So I think that I kind of tailor-made my kitchens to say, hey, we should accommodate any and every dietary restriction. But it's sometimes very difficult, even in a fine dining setup internationally. Like, it's very, very difficult because imagine like 700 plates are coming out of a kitchen, and then to start cooking based on different dietaries in the same night, it can get very hard on the team with the prep.
That's why my question, because you go to some of these places internationally, and you can tell that it's not that there is.
It's not like they don't want to do it.
It's not an intent issue. It's just like so like if you.
It's restrictive. Sometimes kitchens are restrictive.
If this is, to me, I would love to hear your take on this, because it's if you're vegetarian, how do you make sure the food kind of reaches the kind of quality when it's not vegetarian? Is that kind of one hand?
I get asked this question.
Yeah, one hand tied behind your back kind of situation.
Not really. I think that also, like, over the years of just seeing or seeing plates after plates, I mean, like seeing thousands of prepared plates, I kind of can judge that, if it's well prepared or it doesn't look appetizing. Like I can make that difference out just by seeing the plate. But it's also that I have immense trust in my team.
So
and in their flavors and in
the way they function
and how they prepare it.
So like when a restaurant like 11 Madison Park or something like that decides to go all vegetarian or all vegan.
Daniel's a great friend of mine.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, because I remember when I first went there to study, and then I go pretty often, and then it became vegetarian, which was really exciting for me because I'm vegetarian. What does that take, or what is that say about kind of the industry moving forward? What is that an extreme? Because to me that looked extremely challenging for someone of that stature to take that step in a city like that. But
I mean, it's crazy. I remember Daniel saying that, 11 Madison Park was known for its, for my aged dark, or like its pink's bladder or something. I don't even know the dish names, but I'm just saying it was known for certain very iconic dishes, which were also very inspired, like the French. He was so inspired by like the whole French style of cooking, and it was known, it stood for that. And then to have like where they had a queue of like wait list of thousands of diners, and then to overnight go plant-based, and then not have that queue up outside your restaurants. Very scary situation. People started consuming less wine. Like he told me so many things that actually was detrimental to the whole business, that decision. But I think that, it was the way he saw the world moving, or, eating habits moving.
When as a chef, when you discuss sustainability, or when you guys discuss sort of ingredients and doing a lot of reading on sort of insect-based food and things of that nature, is it sustainable? Is the current chain sustainable?
It's an abused word on.
That's why the question.
Like we're all trying to be sustainable. It's a work in progress. Like I don't think any restaurant is 100% sustainable. Even restaurants that don't maybe have a dustbin in their restaurants. And there are restaurants like this globally. They convert all the wastage to some usage within the restaurant. And I think that all of us as food people have this responsibility, and it's a work in progress. For me at a catering, I'm going to say, okay, how do I avoid wastage? How do we not tell the client, okay, we are over ordering, or this is it's too much food for anyone to consume in a night.
Yeah.
But if this is how they want to splurge, how do you change the narrative to make them realize that it's way too much food and it's all going to go into wastage? And we always use these words like saying, hey, let's not do this because, people are going to be full, and then it's honestly just waste. But sometimes it's a catch-22 situation. It's because they want that.
Oh.
So you keep trying to push the agenda, but it's not always a sustainable idea.
So I read this really interesting story, and maybe you can help us kind of clarify about methi in a pasta.
My mom. So I think that methi masala, I think that if you've obviously consumed it since you're a Gujarati, right?
I'm not very fond of Gujju food.
But it's part of your cabinet.
Exactly. It's there. Cabinet. It exists, so you have no option.
Yeah. And just that idea of it being on a khakra overladen with ghee, and you put that methi masala, and how a basic khakra can come to life. And I think that my parents love that combination. They have it every day. It's their part of their diet. And then it just became part of what they traveled with or they carried. And if anything felt under flavor, they'd add it. So it was not particularly to be paired with pasta. It's just, I think my father found something bland and next thing that came out was methi masala.
But the question I mean, when I read that story, what I wanted to discuss with you was how important is fusion, right? Like, are some things supposed to be left untouched, or with the way food is, you should push and you should kind of mix X and Y and Z and see what you can create? And in a sense, I know the answer because you guys push a lot of the envelope. But I'm just curious to, is there something that's sacrosanct?
No, honestly, food is such a personal thing. Like I don't think, like sometimes I eat the darnest combinations of, like, I'll take a toast, it'll have honey, chile, cheese, mango, and that's it's a combination that I enjoy eating. But to someone else, they'd be like, what is it? And so many of my friends will be like, what are you putting? Can we take a bite? And then they eat it and they're like, oh my God, this is heaven. So it's honestly, as Indians, we just love combinations. We love our flavor. We love pushing the envelope in, okay, like if we combine these 5 things, what do we arrive at? It's like pani puri, So it came to me now. Varun prepared a pani puri recently for one of our collaborations. We were traveling, and he added like ants because we got these ants from
like the insect.
From the northeast.
Okay.
And they're like super crunchy and they are quite sour. So he added it as on the pani puri and served it, and he got like 100 hate comments. What are you doing to our pani puri? But I'm just saying that it's how, some of these ideas really push the boundary on flavor.
In terms of some of these really interesting restaurants like Zuma and stuff like that, right? You have Zuma Dubai, Zuma Bangkok, Zuma Miami. Are we going to see a Masque Delhi, a Masque Dubai?
No.
Is that something that you feel you can replicate?
We can replicate, but we don't want to replicate because we think it will lose its essence.
So you have to come to Bombay to
dine at Masque.
To dine at Masque. That's good to know. I think from our end, or from my end, I think this food is such a personal and interesting and sort of important part of everybody's life, especially if you are from around here. That is just really good to have different and interesting opportunities to go and taste different things that you would otherwise have to travel to get. So, from my end, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a really fun conversation.
And just for everybody, at 27 Bakehouse at Masque Restaurant. At Masque Restaurant. So these are great restaurants if anybody's ever in Bombay. And otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you. And good luck with this amazing project.
Thank you.